Sonia of Uplifting Nonprofits, and thank you for joining us for another Uplifting Solutions segment where we ask the nonprofit expert. Today, the person is Susan Zinder. She's so accomplished, I need to read to you her bio. Susan Zinder operates her own New York City-based law practice. For over 25 years, serving as both in-house and outside counsel, she has helped not-for-profit and healthcare clients address their business, regulatory, and operational challenges. Throughout her career, she has assisted not-for-profit boards of directors and executives oversee their organization's daily operations and strategic initiatives. She has also advised board members in the fulfillment of their legal compliance responsibilities, including assessing board effectiveness, oversight of the quality of their organization's services, and responding to significant mission-threatening regulatory citations. Currently, she is serving as Vice Chair Strategic Planning and Special Projects for the Business Law and Governance Practice Group of the American Health Lawyers Association. Wow. Thank you, Susan, for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for getting my vice chairmanship out in one breath.
Did I do that?
You did.
That's great. So with all this experience you have, amazing, and working with boards, tell me, what is it that makes an ideal board member?
An ideal board member takes a position with respect to the board and management of what I call supportive skepticism. They support the organization, they support management, they support and enjoy spending time with their fellow board members. But they ask skeptical questions of management, the board, and the various advisors who come in, not to challenge them as if the advisors and management doesn't know what they're doing,
Right.
but to bring the perspective of the board member to raise the discussion up, to make sure that the management has really considered as many sides of the issue as they can consider, to make sure that they are really thinking proactively, thinking about quality, thinking about what risks can impact their management decisions, and thinking about their decisions holistically.
What are the 3 to 4 things a board member needs to know?
Well, a board member first needs to know if they like the organization and are willing to commit to the organization.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that.
So they have to kind of look at the website and look at anything that's been published recently, and do they agree with the mission? Is this something they are willing to support with their time and their energy? And to that end, they need to know if the board has a give-get. So they need to kind of know, basically, are they committed to the organization and what the give-get is. In terms of understanding the organization itself, they need to understand what the services are the organization provides, if it provides services. And with that, are they quality services? Are the services challenged for quality? Are they challenged for risk issues? What are the services and what is their public reputation?
Can you look at Charity Navigator and
You can totally, and you should,
Right.
look at Charity Navigator and GuideStar, because they will give you a sense as to whether the money that you end up contributing and that you seek to be contributed from others is going toward the mission,
Right.
or is going to the CEO's salary and the administrative team. And while you want to pay the CEO and the administrative team enough money to recruit valuable and knowledgeable people, it's still a nonprofit and you really need to check that.
Okay.
So you need to understand the organization's mission, you need to understand its services, and you need to understand its financial picture. Is it stable? Is it not stable? If it's not stable, why? If it's not stable, what are the changes that management is trying to implement? How can you contribute to those changes?
So if I'm a board member, or coming in, how would I know if it's stable financially or not, if I don't have a financial background?
Well, you would do so in a number of ways. One, even if you don't have a financial background,
Right.
you can download the 990. The 990 is all nonprofit organizations, while they don't pay taxes in terms of dollars. And the 990 will tell you various things about the organization. It will tell you the compensation of the highest paid executives. It will tell you if board members are compensated. It will tell you various issues, various things about the programs and the services provided. So you should totally read that. If you're coming onto a board, you should ask the CEO and the CFO or the treasurer, depending on who serves that role, to sit with you and to go through the financial statements. So you should have a real understanding of the financial stability of the organization.
So I'm going to interrupt you a minute, but it sounds to me that at a board meeting, it would be good to have the CFO come and explain to the whole board the financial.
Well, I think that that's a matter of a routine board agenda. I mean, a routine board agenda will look something like introduction, a review of the minutes, and a review of any documents that have been distributed.
Right.
Some report, either the president's report or some other report around the services and any issues they've had with respect to the services. And there should also be a financial report.
Right.
And the financial report should tell you how well it's doing since the last board meeting, if it's a year in terms of the financial, what the annual financials look like, if there's an audit, because in New York and in other states, organizations over a certain level of revenue need to have an independent audit conducted. But just because there is a committee that might be focused on the quality of services, or there is a committee that's focused on the financials,
Right.
a board member who may not serve on either of those two committees still needs to have at least a high-level understanding of what's going on in those areas, because issues of those areas will appropriately come to the board. And the board's job is to oversee the organization and quite critically to review the performance of the chief executive officer, which gets you back to the supportive skepticism that I mentioned before. Because again, it's not about whether we like the CEO so we can't ask questions and can't be skeptical. You know, all of us, many of us, I don't know all of us, but many of us frequently work better as a team.
Right.
As a team where different people bring different ideas. And even if you are a lay person with really not a lot of background, let's say you're a homemaker or you haven't worked in a number of years, you can still bring your common sense to the board. And that common sense of maybe, you know, I'm not in the weeds providing the services, but what you're saying to me doesn't quite make sense. Can you explain it in a way that makes better sense? Can be very critical, because sometimes when people are in the weeds developing policies, implementing policies, you know, they lose the forest.
Right.
And so those kinds of questions from people who might think, you know, I'm just here to write a check. No board member should sit on a board only to write a check. There are legal implications and ramifications to their sitting on the board. And if all they're going to do is write the check and not attend board meetings and not read the documents prepared, then they're in the wrong role and they will compromise themselves and the organization.
That brings me to a good question. So a lot of nonprofits have challenges finding board members. And you know, right, and what you're asking though is for board members to be sensible and to oversee and to check on the executive director or the CEO. So how does an organization, a nonprofit organization, select board members? How, because of the challenge. So what do they look for, and what documents would they give them if they were interested in having me on the board? Would they give me their 990 and tell me? Okay, so
and let's start with the 990, for example. The 990 is a public document.
Right.
You can go to Google today and Google it. You can go to Cherry Navigator or GuideStar. You may have to pay one of them a membership fee and pull it up. If a document is public and of that weight, then somebody looking to bring somebody onto the board has to be willing, if not in the initial conversation where it might be awkward passing a thick document across the dinner table, you have to be willing to provide it to them. When I worked with my clients when I was in-house, we would provide a board orientation package to new board members. And the package would describe the services the organization provided. It would include the bylaws of the organization. The bylaws describe how the organization operates, and well-written bylaws will contain a job description for that organization's board of directors. Now, maybe that job description might be in a separate document referred to in the bylaws, but a well-run nonprofit with some, maybe not a $5,000 nonprofit,
Right.
but with some amount of revenue and some real operations, will have a job description for their board of directors. You want to look at their conflict of interest policy. 20 years ago, people used to serve on nonprofit boards to get business for themselves from the nonprofit. So a lawyer might serve on the nonprofit board to get the board's legal business.
Right.
That is really not acceptable.
Yeah, no, not anymore. No.
And people need to understand that there's all sorts of networking and all sorts of benefit that you might personally derive in terms of personal satisfaction from serving on a board. But business directly from the organization, business directly from the board itself, it's very much going to compromise the integrity of the organization.
So that brings me back to, again, how does an organization select board members?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge for large organizations. It's a challenge for small organizations.
Especially small.
It is simply a challenge. And I think that you start by publicizing your mission and finding people who want to support your mission. And when you have a very small nonprofit, maybe it starts with bringing on your friends and family onto the board. I mean, just because they're friends and family doesn't mean they can't serve on the board. As the organization gets heft, as it grows, as it increases in revenue, you really want to expand the diversity in all ways of the board. So that, board diversity, it absolutely means racial diversity, it absolutely means gender diversity. But it also
age diversity.
But it also means skill diversity.
Right.
So that if you have a board, let's say your nonprofit is all about providing financial education to high school students. If the only people on that board, say, are accountants, you're going to want somebody on that board who isn't an accountant.
Right.
So it's skill diversity as well. And you want to bring people in who are committed, who are willing to put in the time. The other issue is that even though we like to think all of our board members are brilliant, and all of them are completely committed.
Aren't they?
They're not. Some of them don't have the time, but even the ones who want to serve on the board, I mean, I kind of think of them as the Jewish Seder tells a story about how you're supposed to tell the story of the Exodus to 4 sons.
Okay.
One being wise, one being simple, one being wicked, one being unable to ask. And if you think about it, a board meeting can be a ritual very frequently. There are standardized agendas, and you're telling the story of the organization, and you're telling it time and time again. And we all know board meetings that get boring simply because a lot of it's the same information again. But there really are 4 types of people in the room where you're telling a story repeatedly. And you'll have the wise person, and the wise person is like your ideal board member. They want to know everything about the organization. They want to know everything about the laws that are impacting the organization. They want to know everything about the financial hurdles of the organization. And then hopefully you don't have a wicked board member who wants the conflict of interest, who wants the contracts with the organization, who wants to siphon money out. And if you do, you're going to have to deal with them. And if you don't deal with them, your organization is going to get into compliance problem. But putting that aside for a minute, you also have the simple board member. I mean, and in that, think of your CEO, your local CEO who's here, who's got a limited amount of time, who likes the organization, who's committed to its mission, but doesn't have the time. He's going to want to know the bottom line of the information. What's the bottom line of the service quality? What's the bottom line of the financial stability? If it's not stable, why isn't it stable? You're going to have to bottom line things to that particular board member. And then you're also going to have, and maybe a new board member is a perfect example of this, the person unable to ask, the person who just doesn't know enough to ask any questions. And in that, it's management's job to educate that person, to bring them along to the point where they can ask questions.
So just to end this, because there's so much information, who are the 4 people again?
The wise,
Right.
the simple,
Right.
and the one unable to ask.
I love it. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for all that information. That was wonderful.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
It was good having you. And thank you for joining us for another segment of Uplifting Solutions. And keep smiling because you do make a difference.